Let's start, as I think it behoves us to do, with the economy. Talk of the town, of course. Labour in the past have been branded fiscally incontinent. Not my phrase, of course, not a very nice one. But is this the chance the party has to turn that around?
Well, good morning, Anna.
Morning.
Live from a very happy and upbeat Labour Party conference. And as Michael said, we are, I think, in a strong position, stronger than we have been for some time. And that's in part because we're coming forward with very good policies, but also, regrettably for the country, the Conservatives seem to have lost any fiscal credibility they've had. The fact that it was reported in a national newspaper yesterday afternoon that letters of no confidence are already going in on the current Prime Minister Liz Truss after just 3 weeks. That's as a direct result of last Friday's mini budget, or whatever you want to call it. And I can see why. So Medway Council, for example, one of the biggest employers in the community I represent, the 45p tax cut will help exactly one member of staff, the chief executive. So people are looking on when they're struggling and going, actually, not only is this not helping me, this is helping those who probably need the help the least. Residents, we spoke to residents over the weekend. People have been out in Medway and across the county, and people are angry. I've never seen so many people being angry on the doorstep, and I got that feedback directly from colleagues. Obviously, I've been up here. So, the Conservatives have lost any fiscal credibility in a remarkably short period of time. But that's not good enough. We need to make sure that we have a genuine alternative. And we've been hearing some very strong policies over the last couple of days. And as you rightfully say, we'll hear from Keir Starmer later on. I would say the next Prime Minister, but the reality is the Conservatives could bin Liz Truss before Christmas the way it's going. And frankly, who could blame them after the performance we've seen so far?
I mean, you sound very upbeat about the situation. Obviously, an opposition will want to capitalise on what they may see as flawed policy from the opposition, but you can't want your constituents, people in Medway, to suffer, right? So you need to make sure that the right thing happens. So I suppose it's still the job of the opposition not just to crow in a corner saying you've got better ideas, but to put pressure on.
Well, no, absolutely. You know, 3 weeks ago, listeners on Radio Kent would have heard me criticising Boris Johnson for the last decade, both as Mayor and Prime Minister. So I was pleased to see the back of him. And of course, as somebody who loves this country and loves my community, I want the Prime Minister to do well. I want them to succeed. We'll have difference in policy, of course, but actually I want this country to succeed. And the reality is we're seeing record numbers, but not in a good way, within less than a month of them being in post. So I'm genuinely fearful as to what may come of this. If the trailing of the interest rate rises, which Michael spoke about a moment ago, a potential full 2% increase, I mean, that will have devastating impacts on those who perhaps haven't got fixed mortgages. And we know in the last 24 hours, mortgage companies are now withdrawing products. That is a government which is fiscally useless. And actually, we are now the party, the Labour Party is the party of sound money.
You still rely, though, in your policies quite heavily on borrowing. So how are you going to square the books with that? And there is a reticence, if you like, to give the whole equation, isn't there? You haven't fully costed it, fully funded it. So how can we know that it's the right package?
Well, Rachel Reeves was clear in her speech to conference yesterday, which I'm sure many listeners have heard at least bits of on BBC's reporting. Look, we will have a fully costed programme when we get to the election, whenever that is. And we've seen...
But why not now?
Well, we need to know what the books will look like. And at the moment, with the fiscal decisions that are being taken by this government, who knows where we're going to end up by the end of the week, let alone by the end of this Parliament. So there are some clear plans. And actually, it's been Labour pushing on things like the windfall tax. You know, I'm sure most listeners will be sat there going, their gas and electric bills are going up by more and more. And actually, this government's priority is to not extend the windfall tax to those companies who are, by their own admission, one of the chief executives said they were a cash machine. And to prioritise things like bankers' bonuses, when actually there is a different way There's an alternative way, and that will be what we'll put forward. And you and listeners will hear a lot more of that from Keir Starmer this afternoon.
How do you square that, though, with wanting to boost the economy, which I know Labour does as much as the Tories? I know you've got different ideas about how you do it, but of course the Tories are saying, well, we want to encourage big firms, big business, big tech, all of that to come here, and cutting tax is part of it.
Well, the reality is trickle-down economics fundamentally fails. It doesn't work. Joe Biden, as Michael said, Joe Biden has been speaking about this. So this is not just a UK view. This is a worldwide view. Of course, you can take an alternative view, and we saw that on Friday. And the reaction to that has been rejection by the economic markets, rejection by mortgage lenders, rejection by senior organisations who look at the world of employment. Nobody thinks last Friday's budget was a good thing, and we've seen. And again,
well, some people do, to be fair. Just to be accurate, Some economists do. They are, of course, saying it's bold and brash and all of that kind of thing.
I'm sure they do, but I go back to the point of saying, how on earth are we at a situation where 3 weeks in, 21 days in, Conservative backbench MPs are going, actually, I think that they've got buyer's remorse. Remarkable that they're now putting in letters of no confidence. And one thing I'm very confident is that whoever is from Kent there next week in Birmingham, I'm sure they will not be feeling as confident moving forward. But actually, we need these changes to come sooner rather than later, because every day we've got a Conservative government with this fiscal incompetence is another day where families are struggling, mortgages will be struggled to be paid, wages are being cut in real terms. Those are not sustainable.
Final point. It has been said that Sir Keir Starmer has failed to cut through with the public, and you'll know he will have a lot of work to do in Kent, which obviously only has one Labour MP at the moment. So can he do enough to prove that he's got perhaps the charisma, the dynamism to take on the top job?
Well, some of your listeners may have tuned in yesterday on YouTube to see the conversation with him and Gary Neville, and I think actually that was really interesting. It's not something that was even particularly planned, I think, when conference agenda was first sent out. And actually you saw the far more human side of Keir, but along with the serious challenges of potentially being our next Prime Minister. And I think we'll see some more of that this afternoon in the speech. I'll be in the hall, and I look forward to hearing from my party leader, and as I say, subject to the Conservatives not sacking Liz Truss, the next British Prime Minister.